is heard, my brother. Crom.
The gods and goddesses in the Conan universe are pretty much real. Robert E. Howard took inspiration from real-world mythology, ancient legends, and even historical kings and heroes. In the world of Conan, these gods don't reside in heaven, nor are they always benevolent. Not all of them have power, but most of these gods interfere and sometimes directly shape the fate of humanity. Some of them are kind, but most of them are dark and terrifying, and that's why in this video, we're going to be diving deep into every god and goddess from the Conan universe. It's going to be a good one, so let's get right into it. Set. Set is one of the most powerful and feared gods in the Conan universe. He's an ancient serpent god mainly worshipped in the dark and mysterious land of Stygia, where snakes are considered sacred. In fact, harming a snake there is seen as a terrible crime. Set's followers often lie down whenever they see a snake, hoping to be bitten, as they see it as a blessing. Set is the arch-nemesis of gods like Atum, Ibis, and Mitra. The thing about Set is that he's not a benevolent god. He's one of those gods who demands constant attention because he's known to be extremely cruel and jealous, continuously demanding sacrifice. Set's priests are some of the most powerful and feared sorcerers in the entire Conan universe. Priests sacrifice virgin girls to satisfy Set's bloodlust without batting an eyelid. He's often described as a massive serpent, sometimes with multiple heads, and sometimes taking on a half-human, half-snake form. The land of Stygia is run on fear, as people are terrified of Set, and the priests and clergy have no qualms about sacrificing their own people to appease the dark god. Some cults worship Set outside of Stygia, but they keep their devotion a secret. Kali. If you think the name Kali sounds familiar, you're probably right. Kali is directly inspired by the Hindu goddess of destruction and transformation with the same name, and, just like her real-world counterpart, Kali in the Conan universe is associated with darkness, sacrifice, and terrifying power. Kali is worshipped in parts of the Hyborian world, especially in regions inspired by ancient India, like Vendya. Her followers see her as a powerful and fearsome goddess, one who must be respected, obeyed, and feared. Her cults are known for performing human sacrifices in her name. Unlike some gods in the Conan universe who grant power or protection, Kali is mostly silent. She rarely appears, rarely intervenes, and doesn't openly bless her worshippers. So why do these people worship Kali? Well, Kali represents inevitable destruction, so it's both fear and tradition that makes people perform sacrifices in her name. Not much is known about Kali in the Conan universe, since she's a minor god and hasn't featured in the Conan comics. Crom. If you're a fan of the Conan universe, then you must know Crom. Crom is the chief god of the Cimmerians, and the problem with Crom is that he pretty much does nothing. Crom resides on a great dark mountain and silently watches the world below. He doesn't answer prayers, he doesn't offer blessings, and honestly, he doesn't seem to really care whether people live or die. The Cimmerians believe that Crom gives every person one single gift at birth, that is, the strength to live, fight, and survive. And that's it. After that, you're expected to figure out everything on your own. In fact, praying to Crom is seen as a sign of weakness, and Crom hates weakness. He hates all forms of flattery and abhors his worship. The Cimmerians believe that praying to Crom might actually bring you misfortune, which is why the Cimmerians don't worship him at all. They simply acknowledge his existence and go about their lives. Across the Conan stories, there's really only one moment where he steps in to save Conan from an unworthy death at the hands of a magician, only because Conan hasn't yet fulfilled his true purpose. Adalie. Adalie is one of the most fascinating personalities in the Conan universe. She's known for her bewitching beauty and her pale skin, shining golden red hair, and a voice that sounds almost magical. She's the daughter of Ymir, the frost giant, and she's an Asgardian goddess. Adalie appears on the frozen battlefields of Nordheim, where warriors lie wounded or dying. She lures them and compels these men to follow her across the icy wastelands as if they're under her spell. But of course, it's all a trap. As the men chase her deeper into the snow, her frost giant brothers rise from hiding and kill them. They take their hearts as offerings to their father, Ymir. Adalie watches this and encourages them, which, for us, makes her feel less like a goddess and more like a passive figure. Her most famous appearance is in the story The Frost Giant's Daughter, where she encounters Conan, who, even in his wounded state, is drawn to her and chases her across the frozen land. However, unlike her other victims, Conan survives. He fights off her giant brothers and nearly captures her, until she calls upon Ymir to save her. Duretto. Duretto is a goddess with a dual nature. In places like Shem and Stygia, she's worshipped as a goddess of love, desire, and fertility, and she represents passion, life, and physical pleasure. However, in the southern regions like the Black Kingdoms, she's feared as a dark queen of death. We find this duality fascinating. It's almost as if we're talking about two different goddesses here. Duretto represents both creation and destruction, and it makes sense because life and death exist together. She's sometimes depicted as half-beautiful woman and half-decaying corpse. Her cults are known for elaborate and highly sensual rituals, often centered around pleasure and physical experience. But these rituals sometimes also involve sacrifice and extreme acts meant to blur the line between life and death. In some places, her temples are almost luxurious, designed for comfort, indulgence, and the freeing of inhibitions, but in other regions, her followers focus more on death and sacrifice. In some traditions, Dagon is known to be her consort. Jabal Sag. Jabal Sag is an ancient god who's also known as the Lord of Beasts, the god of animals, and the wilderness. According to the lore, there was a time when all living beings, humans and animals, worshipped Jabal Sag. Back then, everyone was an equal and they all shared a common language, but over time, this connection they shared was severed when human civilizations grew and most people forgot about Jabal Sag. The ones who remember him still worship him, especially in the Black Kingdoms and among the Pictish tribes. His priests are shamans, hunters, and people who live close to the land. Some of his followers can even talk to animals and control them. If we're talking about appearances, Jabal Sag can appear as different animals or even multiple creatures at once. Sometimes he won't even appear personally, he'll just send other animal gods in his place. Even though he's so connected with nature, he isn't necessarily a kind god. When you consider the wilderness, the rule is always survival of the fittest. So, in this world, there's only strength and weakness. He represents strength and survival because in the wild, the weak die. His followers reflect this mindset as well. They perform sacrifices, leave offerings of meat, and sometimes even try to become more like animals themselves. Yog. One of the most terrifying gods in the Conan universe is Yog. Known as the Lord of Empty Abodes, he's worshipped by cannibal tribes in regions like Darfar and among desert nomads like the Gwahliurs. He's basically the god of cannibalism, and that's what makes him so terrifying. His entire religion revolves around the idea that his followers must consume human flesh as part of their devotion. In fact, his followers are only allowed to eat meat. They cannot consume plants or anything vegetarian, and they must eat human flesh regularly to remain pure. So how do they get human flesh to consume? Well, they conduct ceremonies under the full moon and capture victims and sacrifice them in fire-lit pits. Yog's worshippers hunt in groups, raiding and capturing victims. The victims are seen as offerings, sometimes even believed to represent something sacred before being consumed. In many parts of the Hyborian world, scholars actually consider him a demon, and honestly, that just makes sense. Yog is a monstrous, eldritch being who can fly and has tentacles, so his appearance resembles that of a demon. Ishtar. Ishtar is another goddess who isn't entirely cruel, but she's not exactly benevolent either. She's more neutral. Ishtar is mainly worshipped in Shem, and her temples have the most luxurious designs in the entire Hyborian world. Inspired by Mesopotamian mythology, Ishtar in the Conan universe is the goddess of love, fertility, beauty, and desire. She can take on both male and female forms, but she mostly appears as a young, voluptuous woman wearing a golden crown. Her worship is deeply tied to physical pleasure, passion, and the enjoyment of life's desires. Ishtar's worship is all about excess. Her temples are known for rituals that include sensual ceremonies and even sacred prostitution, where intimacy itself becomes an act of devotion. She represents passion, love, and attraction, but she also represents the more extreme version of those, which can be overwhelming, consuming, and destructive. Her followers believe that she can actually inhabit statues in her temples. Her rituals also include animal sacrifices, usually meant to gain her favor for fertility and good harvests. Drought and deformed children are seen as bad omens from Ishtar. Morrigan/Bav/Navan/Maka. Morrigan and her sisters are Sumerian goddesses. Morrigan herself is a goddess of war, often associated with battle, death, and fate, but she isn't a singular being. She's a combination of three aspects: Bav, Navan, and Maka. Bav is connected to battle and death. She's represented as a crow that flies over the battlefield, feeding on dead soldiers. Navan represents the chaos, frenzy, and panic in battles. She's all about the madness surrounding fighting. Maka is more gentle and connected to sovereignty and the land itself. Together, all of them form the Morrigan, or the Great Queen. Morrigan, in her entirety, represents the entire cycle of war, life, death, victory, and destruction, all woven together. These goddesses are rarely seen, but their names are invoked by Sumerians, even Conan himself. They exist under Crom, who's the chief god of the Sumerians. While Crom represents raw strength and indifference, Morrigan and her aspects represent the chaos and emotion of battle itself. It's interesting because it proves that there is a hierarchy among gods as well. Zath. Zath is known as the spider god of Yezud, a city in Zamora. His followers believe that he's a real physical being who walks the earth. He's represented as a black spider, and in the great temples of Yezud, there's a massive statue of Zath with gem-like eyes, and according to his cult, this statue can actually come to life. Apparently, it can even hunt and devour the sacrifices brought to it. Zath is deeply connected to giant spiders that roam the hills and caverns around Yezud, and his priests breed creatures in large numbers, keeping entire colonies hidden beneath the temple. The priests of Zath are often described as assassins, spies, and people who operate in the shadows. They're said to use these spiders as weapons, threatening regions if their power is challenged. Zath's followers believe that he will one day cleanse the world of corruption, basically wiping out the weak or the sinful. Conan himself encountered Zath, who appeared as a massive and monstrous spider. Conan struggled greatly in this fight despite his strength. Erlick. Erlick is the god of the underworld and is known as the Yellow God of Death, and he's mainly worshipped in regions like Hyrcania and Turan. According to the lore, Erlick rules over the deepest levels of the underworld, a dark realm where souls go after death. His origin story is actually quite tragic. In some versions of the lore, Erlick was the first man, but he was created without a soul. So he tried to create a soul for himself, but failed, and he eventually became associated with death. In other versions, he was cast down because of pride and became a dark ruler beneath the world. Erlick is tragic because he doesn't completely belong among the gods, nor among the humans, so he ended up as a fallen figure ruling the underworld. Erlick is worshipped by warriors, shamans, and sometimes even more extreme cults. Some of his most devoted followers are described as violent and fanatical, even engaging in brutal rituals and sacrifices. There's also a strong connection between Erlick and dark magic. His priests are said to practice necromancy, communicating and controlling the dead. If proper rituals or sacrifices aren't made, he can bring misfortune, illness, and even death. Hanuman. Inspired by the Hindu deity, Hanuman, in the Conan universe, is known as the ape god, and he's primarily worshipped in the city of Damballa. In Damballa, there's a massive shrine dedicated to him with a black stone idol sitting at its center. This statue is described as having glowing ruby eyes and a disturbing, mocking expression. He strikes fear into the hearts of his devotees. People come to his temple and offer gifts and prayers in fear, but at night, the temple is completely avoided. Hanuman's worship is heavily tied to human sacrifice. Victims are brought into the temple and offered to the god, often in brutal rituals meant to appease him. The priests of Hanuman are just as dangerous. They're powerful, influential, and deeply feared figures within Damballa. One of the most notable among them is Totrismek, a high priest who is not only involved in religious rituals, but also deeply entangled in the city's politics. Hanuman rarely manifests physically, but he is one of the major gods worshipped in Damballa. There are also hints that his worship came from eastern regions like Vendia, which makes sense given his inspiration. Nebet. Nebet is another such goddess who isn't cruel but not exactly benevolent either. She has many names and is also known as the Ivory Goddess, the Queen of Darkness, and the Mistress of the Night. Nebet is mainly worshipped in the land of Punt, a southern kingdom in the Conan universe. The people of Punt depend upon this goddess. They visit her temple whenever they need guidance on matters like war and leadership, and she actually responds to them. Her temple is a massive skull-shaped structure made of white stone, designed to look like a giant silver skull. Inside it is her idol, a beautiful ivory woman with the head of a skull. It's said to come alive and speak, delivering prophecies and omens to her followers. Nebet doesn't just speak through statues. She can actually possess a human body, usually a woman who enters her temple. And when that happens, the person becomes her voice and her will. She's kind that way, but she also requires sacrifice to be appeased. Her more benevolent side is seen as a bringer of wealth and prosperity. According to Puntian law, her temple must remain empty, and no one is allowed to live inside. Priests only enter to perform rituals or to receive her messages. Soli. Soli isn't exactly a god. He's a demon god, also known as the Lord of Terror. He's really ancient. Soli was first worshipped by the people of Atlantis before its fall, and later by the inhabitants of the islands of Antilia. In Antilia, a powerful group of dark priests controlled the entire kingdom in his name. They operated from a massive city called Thahukan, where they performed large-scale human sacrifices to bring Soli into the world. If you look at Soli, he doesn't have a human appearance. He manifests as a massive cloud of darkness. He also requires sacrifice, and he consumes the souls of his victims. These sacrifices are brought to towering pyramid-like altars where their souls are taken and their bodies are discarded into pits below. His followers send out red shadows to steal souls to feed him. In the later Conan stories, Conan himself travels to Antilia to confront this god. Soli feels almost untouchable, but with the help of a sacred amulet connected to Mitra, Conan manages to unleash a power of light strong enough to banish him. Gwahliur. Gwahliur is known as the King of Darkness and is worshipped mainly in Kishan, a jungle kingdom south of Stygia. His main place of worship is an ancient forbidden city called Alkmenon. Normal people are forbidden to enter, only priests can enter the city, and they do so with fear. It is said that at the beginning of the world, the other gods were so afraid of Gwahliur that they tore the teeth out of his jaws and hid them away. Those lost teeth are known as the Teeth of Gwahliur, a set of 9 powerful gems that glow with an eerie light and are said to hold strange, almost supernatural abilities. Beneath the ruined palace of Alkmenon, there are underground caves filled with grotesque idols, some representing Gwahliur himself or other ancient gods connected to him. Priests perform long, complicated rituals, moving from chamber to chamber, chanting in ancient languages. But what we found most interesting is the fact that they might not be worshipping Gwahliur at all. Perhaps they're guarding his teeth and performing rituals to keep him weakened and imprisoned. Nameless Old Ones. Nameless Old Ones are ancient entities who are beyond human understanding. They have no names and are barely described in the stories by Robert E. Howard. In The Phoenix on the Sword, Conan sees carvings of them, vast shadowy shapes etched into stone, towering and mysterious. But when we look deeper into the Conan lore, it's suggested that these beings are often connected to the Elder World, a time long before human civilization when the Earth was ruled by strange creatures and nightmarish entities. Some interpretations of these ancient creatures connect to the works of H.P. Lovecraft, who was one of Robert E. Howard's writing partners. What's really interesting is that the Old Ones aren't actually gods in the traditional sense. In some stories, they're described as ancient races who lived on Earth before humans even existed. There are also hints that these beings demanded sacrifices, performed dark rituals, and possessed knowledge far beyond human understanding. Their temples, now in ruins, are often filled with traps, treasures, and remnants of forgotten civilizations. Ashtoreth. Ashtoreth actually has some of our favorite lore because she's not actually a goddess at all. In the Hyborian Age, Ashtoreth is worshipped as a goddess by the people of a mysterious island city called Kelka. But here lies the twist. She's actually a woman named Astarte, a princess from the lost continent of Mu. Her father worshipped a sea god and she was meant to become his bride. The sea god blessed her with immortality and she survived the Great Cataclysm. She was carried to the island of Kelka by waves. The people there, not fully understanding who or what she was, began to worship her. Over time, her identity changed. She became Ashtoreth, a goddess figure tied to fertility, protection, and divine presence. Tragedy befell her when priests, fearing her power, imprisoned her. Instead of letting her exist freely, they kept her locked away and continue the illusion of divine worship. She called out to her husband, the sea god, but the priest's magic took away her voice. Over time, the people of Kelka began to devolve into a more primitive and savage society, still clinging to the worship of a goddess they didn't truly understand. Eventually, Conan and Belit arrive on the island, and the truth about Ashtoreth begins to unravel. She's freed from her imprisonment, and once the control of the priests is broken, her connection to the sea god returns, and she gets her voice back. The sea god, in his fury, submerged the city of Kelka and its people. In the end, she reunited with her husband. Damballa. Damballa is basically Set with another name. In the Hyborian Age, Damballa is worshipped mainly in the southern Black Kingdoms, especially in a powerful land called Zimbabwe. Yup, it's actually called Zimbabwe, but don't worry, it's spelled a little different, I guess. Anyways, Damballa is strongly associated with serpents and appears in the form of a massive snake. When he manifests, it's said he rises out of smoke, coiling and towering over his followers before devouring sacrifices brought before him. In the forbidden city of Old Zimbabwe, where outsiders are not allowed to enter, the altars of Damballa are said to run red with human blood. Ritual sacrifices are performed regularly, and during special nights, known as the Blood Moon, the moon itself is believed to turn red as these offerings are made. The priests of Damballa are often tribal shamans and witch doctors, deeply connected to jungle magic and dark rituals. But what's interesting is the tension between them and the priests of Set in Stygia. Both groups know they are actually worshipping the same god, but in very different ways. In Zimbabwe, one of the twin kings, Nanauner, is not only a ruler, but also a high priest of Damballa. Nergal. Nergal is one of those gods who people avoid. In the Conan universe, Nergal is feared because he's associated with death, destruction, and the underworld. He's not worshipped at all because people fear attracting his attention in any way. Nergal is often connected with lions, specifically the wild maneless lions that roam the lands of Shem. These creatures are believed to be his emissaries, carrying out his will in the mortal world. There's also this idea that Nergal exists in the underworld, bound in a dark realm alongside his queen, called Erlick. Some legends even suggest that he desires to return to the world of men, but cannot unless countless lives are taken. Nergal's influence often shows up through cursed objects or dark magic. One of the most famous examples is something called the Hand of Nergal, an ancient artifact said to bring death and corruption wherever it goes. The hand grants immense power to whoever possesses it, but over time it corrupts the user, twisting them into something cruel and destructive. Dagon. In the world of Conan, Dagon is strongly connected to the sea. He's often described as a powerful aquatic god associated with deep oceans and strange inhuman creatures. Dagon is often linked to the Nameless Old Ones, and that goes to show how ancient he really is. He is also known as the ruler and father figure of a race of creatures called the Deep Ones, amphibious fish-like beings that live in the oceans and serve him. Physically, Dagon is massive, part fish and part man with tentacles and scales. Some stories also connect him to ancient civilizations such as the lost city of Dagonia. In some versions of the lore, Dagon is also tied to the idea of resurrection and awakening. He's sometimes depicted as a sleeping god whose return could bring massive destruction. Wiccanna. The concept of Wiccanna is deeply influenced by the Wiccan religion. In the Hyborian Age, Wiccanna is known as a goddess worshipped in regions like Brythunia. Wiccanna represents a kind of nature goddess or deity connected to magic and the unseen forces of the world. There's no strong mention of a structured priesthood or massive temples dedicated to her. She's a nature goddess, and her worshippers are dedicated to healing practices. Her followers are women who are celibate, and they never cut their hair. Wiccanna priestesses do not seclude themselves, they reside in villages. Yama. In the Conan universe, Yama is known as the King of Devils and is worshipped mainly in a mysterious eastern land called Meru. The most interesting thing about him is that the ruler of Meru is believed to be the reincarnated son of Yama. It is said that Yama actually shaped the land of Meru itself. It's said that he used immense power to create a great valley called the Cup of the Gods by sinking the earth between massive mountain ranges. The ground shook, mountains collapsed, and the land transformed into a fertile valley where life could thrive. Yama is also strongly associated with demons, fear, and judgment. He's a god people obey, not one that they love. In Meru, the priests of Yama hold absolute power because it creates a society where religion and government are completely fused. There's no separation. If you go against the priest, you're going against God. So people obey, not just out of devotion, but because they believe his wrath is real. Yama is often represented by a massive multi-armed form, sometimes depicted as a towering statue within temples. Woman in the Moon. The Woman in the Moon is probably the most gentle goddess in the Conan universe, and she was worshipped by the ancient Atlanteans. The Woman in the Moon has no temples, nor does she demand any rituals. In fact, she's now turned into folktale. According to the myth, there was once a tiger being chased by hunters. Desperate and with nowhere left to run, the tiger cried out for help, and the Woman in the Moon answered. She lowered a vine from the sky, allowing the tiger to climb to safety. The tiger then lived with her in the moon for many years, safe from harm. And ever since, it's said that all tigers roar at the moon in remembrance of her. She represents the moon itself, calm, distant, and quietly watching over the world. The Woman in the Moon doesn't demand anything, and what we love most about her is how different her presence feels compared to everything else in this universe. She doesn't terrify people into worshipping her, nor does she care that she's been forgotten by human civilization. She simply exists, calm and serene in the night sky, smiling down on the people below.
Crom, so grant me one request. Grant me revenge.
And with that, we've reached the end of this video. What I love about the gods and goddesses of the Conan universe is how diverse and layered they are. Some are terrifying and cruel, demanding human sacrifices and spreading fear. But what's even more interesting is how humans take that fear and use it to establish their own authority shaping society in the name of these gods. While some gods choose to remain distant from the human world, others actively participate in it, and that's what makes this lore so fascinating. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stuff like it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another video. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.